Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be in front of you to represent the government of Sri Lanka, to give you confidence in building our capital markets further. Chairman, Board of Directors of LOLC Securities, distinguished panelists who are here, representatives from regulatory bodies, Sri Lanka Stock Exchange and Securities Exchange Commission, and members of the media and the investors, the potential investors who are here. So we now understand uncertainty is the certainty. So that's what we have to admit and move on. So Sri Lanka has been going through various difficulties in various phases, but we have been resilient. I think that's the key trait of Sri Lanka. And today the entire world talks about being neutral and being humanitarian. I think the decisions that we took last few days has put Sri Lanka also on top of the global map as well. So as Sri Lankans, humility, kindness and hope has been always there, and we have always been resilient to come out of various problems we had to face both internally and externally. So I was asked to share some thoughts on the current economic condition, and probably I'll talk a little bit about the today's situation as well. So before that, I would have been part of you guys if I pursued my original career. So I did finance at University of Sri Jawadanapura, started doing CFA and did 2 levels, and then felt operations is much interesting than managing somebody's wealth. So I shifted to operations, but those days I was thinking to join a stock brokering firm or Moody's or all these global stock management, wealth management organ. That was my university dream. But then things changed, and today here I'm talking to you as a Deputy Minister for Industries in the government. And another reason that I wanted to be part of this is that one of the greatest barriers for industrialization in Sri Lanka is lack of capital. Actually, it's not lack of capital, it's lack of knowledge about capital. I would say 90% of our industrialists have not sought capital market as a source of capital for their growth. Therefore, we face lot of difficulties as industries because their balance sheets are full of debt. Sometimes I tell them your business is owned by the bank. So when some crisis happen, don't blame the bank because it's already owned by the bank, because the balance sheet is too geared to debt and they have not raised capital. So therefore, from Ministry of Industries perspective also, my plan is to drive about 100 new institutions into the stock market within next 2 to 3 years. Because that's how country would grow. That's how we would make global companies. That's how we will get strong entities that can carry Sri Lankan brands across. We have seen examples of the listed companies over the last 10 years, how they have performed. And we are happy to say the current stock market performance is reflective of its assets. We had certain eras that doubts whether the stock market really reflects the value of the underlying assets. But we can see on ground, these institutions, both all the sectors, especially finance, tourism, and even agricultural, some of the listed companies are doing extremely well. We can tangibly see them growing. And in terms of the economic position, that all of us are very interested to understand how we recovered and are we going to sustain. For that, we need to first understand and admit why we got bankrupt. Without that, I don't think anything that we do as changes for the last few years is going to make sense. Sri Lanka had 2 problems. The biggest problem was the continuing fiscal deficit, unbearable fiscal deficit. And if someone asks me why, one would say it's corruption. No, it was not corruption only. Corruption comes because of utilization of resources, and corruption drives things that to misuse of funds. But what really happened was we failed in collecting taxes. In 1990, we were collecting 20% of our GDP as our taxes. By the time we collapsed, that is 2019, we were only collecting 8.5% of GDP as our taxes. So we continue to have a large deficit. For that deficit, then governments continue to borrow from local market. So that is why the stock market did not grow. So today what you are seeing for the last year's growth, mainly due to a stable government which is not borrowing excessively from the local market. And the government treasury bills and bonds are yielding about 8%. So sometimes you feel it's not a good yield. So where would you park your money? So that is why there's more liquidity in the stock market. So continually we had that problem. By 2015, then government and the experts of finance, call themselves experts, went to ISBs, borrowed at 7%. And you are guys who are doing predictions, LOLC and all these analysts who are there. I didn't see any analyst predicting that we are bankrupting by 2020. Any analyst can predict that. But since it was not your job was to give confidence, nobody predicted that in public. But as people who are interested in politics and country, we knew we are going to collapse. That is why we built National People's Power in 2015. We were forecasting the collapse. Because there was no chance Sri Lanka was going to pay $4.5 billion a year from 2020. That was the first issue. And in order to, on top of that, we had a continuous trade imbalance. So the trade account was expanding and the external resources were depleting. So these two variables were the problems. So what did we do over the last few years with the IMF program? We disciplined the government, started collecting revenue more methodically and rigorously, rationalized the expenditure for priority sectors and ensured that we have a primary surplus. So now things are stable, right? So there is no way that Sri Lanka is going to collapse financially going forward. Why? Our fiscal discipline is enacted, and you have a government who's disciplined, and we have shown you over 1.5 years how disciplined we are, being able to be within the budget, being able to collect our revenues. So there will not be any problem in the fiscal space going forward. And therefore, government will not borrow excessively, funds will come to the stock market. So you will have ample liquidity going forward, right? And on the other side, we see the variables that can take us out of this crisis, which is exports. We have the Export Development Board chairman here who is driving exports for the country with his team. We are expecting a 10% continuous growth. So we've achieved 17.2 billion last year, which is probably the highest in our history. And we are keep growing. And this January we have a 13% growth than last January. Tourism is growing. Remittances have gone beyond 8.1 billion. FDIs have crossed 1.2 billion only on BOI, but beyond that we will get more FDIs through Port City as well. So we will be basically crossing more than 2 billion a year going forward. So when you forecast these numbers, for the next 5 years, foreseeable future, our debt repayment is below $3.5 billion. So last year we serviced $3.9 billion. This year only $2.7 billion. Going forward it will be 3.5 or below up until 2032. So as an investor, what more do you want? You have your macroeconomy predicted. Fiscal deficit is predicted. Inflation is predicted. Interest rate can be predicted. Exchange rate is going on market demand and supply. It's depreciating at the right rate. What else would you need to assume now? So now you have to look at the real assets, the growth sectors of the country, and keep investing because it's going to grow. Right? So therefore, we don't see any risk at this point, given the current trajectory, that Sri Lanka will fail in again. So we now have a triple C. We are expecting a B minus by end of this year. So it will allow foreign capital to also flow into our market. So therefore, we are in a good position. And there is, all the indicators are directing towards that, where government is making significant changes beyond governance. Sometimes people see this government is, we will all admit that this government will not get corrupt or will not do corruption. That is not enough to reform. We have missed reforms for 20 years. We've now enacted the new trade policy or the tariff policy, which is 20 years late. We know it's tough, but we are going for it. We've made significant changes in certain other reforms like land, investment policy. There's a PPP Act that's going to come. Strategic Investment Act is clear. Port City Act has been amended. So going forward, there will not be any ambiguity for investments because it's on a rule-based methodology. It's been clearly crafted out what will be the incentives, what are the priority sectors, and we see certain sectors are booming. And there will be more and more. On the other side, you are seeing, first time in the history, a digital transformation is tangibly happening. Was there any point that we thought that we could pay our, when we are copped somewhere in Anuradhapura or Tambuttegama or in Monaragala, that we can take our license back and come to Colombo? Now you can pay it online. Every transaction in the government is going to be digital by end of next year. Each of the government services will go on digital to processes. So that will reduce the amount of touch points that you will have to interact with government officials. Just before this session, we were having a chat, this government is slow. Yes, because we work on rules. If you don't want to work on rules, we can go back to the old system. You call the minister, minister call the officer, officer will do the things. We are not doing like that. So we have to amend acts which are old as 1918. Did you know that the act that enables business registration in this country goes back to 1918? The amendment that has come was lastly on 1987. So for a person to register a business, you need to submit more than 15 documents. Now we agreed last week to bring it to one document. You just have to prove your address, you will get the business registration within 2 days. So these are fundamental changes. That has never happened. We will all get a digital ID next year, which never happened. We will get a single window for investment within next few years. We will get a single window for trade within next few years. Inland revenue is going through a transformation. Customs is going through a transformation. It's painful. It'll take time because it has never happened. People are resisting. Do you like to change? None of us are willing to change. Are we willing to change our diet? Are we willing to change and walk or run every day or at least 3 times a day? Change is difficult. So you expect a 1.3 million government service that has been there for 20 years is going to change just because a new government came? It's not going to happen. It's painful, but we are doing it. So with all these changes, we see there's a great opportunity for business, great opportunity for investment. And that is why, as a government, we are also pushing stock market as the source of equity. So there will be more and more organizations listing. The listed companies will be moving into various securities like debentures, green bonds, orange bonds, sukuks, whatever, I mean, I don't know how many instruments you will bring, but the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Stock Exchange is working very hard on these things. And there will be more institutional global investors coming in. Port City will be booming. Maybe in future we can have a futures exchange. I don't know, commodity exchange. Sri Lanka will be the hub. Look at how we are playing. We brought Pakistan and India to play in here. We brought an Iranian naval ship safely to our shores. We've been politically neutral. And that's going to help us immensely to become the next transformation of the region. If it was Dubai, if it was Saudi for the last 10 years, we have the opportunity now. Because everybody across the world would see Sri Lanka as the place that they can interact with the entire world. We can trade with any government. We can trade with any nation. We will have multiple trade agreements coming in next few years, which has never happened. We only have 3 trade agreements which are in existence. India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. Trade what? We have GSP plus with Europe. Luckily we are surviving with US. We just got free access to UK. But we have to get access to our region. Africa's, East Asia's. So we are working very hard on trade agreements. So therefore Sri Lanka is going to be the hub for many. And you are also seeing Colombo is lit up every weekend or every night with hundreds of events because it's becoming the hub for events as well. So therefore we see a lot of prospect, and I think the GDP growth is expected to go surpass 5. So that's the government's expectation, but being cautious, we have predicted at 5%. And then the sectors you see, when I said the dollar income earning sectors are booming, and apart from that there are other sectors which are growing, like electronic manufacturing is doing very well, agriculture, value added agriculture is doing very well, boat building industry is doing very well, technology, the digital services economy is going very much because there's a focused attention under the president with the support of Dr. Hans. So there's so much of opportunity, and we want to bring all that opportunity into the stock market. So that is how the opportunities will reflect its real value, no? So there's a lot of work to be done on that side. And I think existing situation, so we all need to know, we have not covered our corners of security. As a country, we are always fragile because we are not a country that has free access to energy. So we had to build our capacity. If you have listened or read last 2 days, you would have heard that government is investing 47 billion rupees in building infrastructure capacity to hold more fuel and, have energy security. We are working very hard to transform agriculture sector so that we will have food security. We are working very hard in domestic medicine manufacturing, so we will have health security. So this country has basically done nothing for the last 30 years to have a sovereign, secure nation. So that is happening on the side. And I can tell you, the turbulences that we go through will happen. So this is how the world works. It will go in cycles. At this point, we don't predict a World War III. So we will see off this space. We will have turbulences. We are threatened with various sectors. We will see a dip in tourism. We will see hikes in prices. That is a global thing. It's nothing to do with us. It will happen across the world. Consumption might come down across globe. Investments might be a little slow because of the uncertainty that is being posed. So however, I think these things will tail off by end of this year. So for the first quarter, we will have some turbulences. So we will have to catch up within the next 3 quarters. As a government, We are not changing the budget. Even with Ditwa, we didn't change the budget. We were strong enough to manage that because we had 500 billion disposable cash. So by strength to strength, the government has enough resources to cover these risks. For the industries, we have fuel security or energy security for the next 3 to 4 months. And the fuel, or do you say, the vessels are planned up to April, so there is no threat there. We are getting energy vessels from India and Singapore, and they have those. These are refined oil, and for our crude oil need also, we have orders placed up to April, and they have committed that those will be delivered. So I think apart from that, what we will see is actions that the government would take based on a very careful analysis of how things happen across the world. There are alternatives, there are alternative methods, alternative ways of managing the country, and we will trigger them as it comes. And don't get carried away with false information. That's my request. So as stockbrokers, people who predict and forecast the economy and stocks, you need to be able to share the right information with the public as well. Because so much of false information running through, right? We know for few, right? Because when this government came in, people said within 3 months there will be queues. And few months IMF will run away. Few months the government will fail. This is the uncertainty unwantedly being predicted when we are on a very strong growth trajectory. And from the government perspective, we can tell you, we will ensure this discipline of governance will continue even beyond the IMF program. We are using IMF program as a learning tool, a framework, so that we can strengthen ourselves and be better as we move forward. And we are making changes that will have structural impact for the next 20 to 30 years. We are making a significant change in education, which is going to fuel our growth. We are going through a huge technological transformation that we have not witnessed as Sri Lankans. So therefore, I would like to end my initial remarks with this, and we have to stay positive. We have been resilient, and the public and the investment fraternity has to be working hand in hand with the government. We have no other intention to make this country better. We have no other intention to get 27% of our population out of poverty. Those are the two things. And we will ensure law is above all. And these three promises is what we made when we came into power, and we will continue to do so. And wish all of you all very best, and encourage entire industrialists to be part of the stock market and show the benefits of the stock market. Whilst you educate the investors, please do educate the private companies what benefits they will have when they list. When they list, they don't need collateral for borrowing. They can issue debentures. When they list, they don't have to be limited to a single borrower limit. When they list, they can be global within a week. So with this, I end my remarks for the session, and have a great evening. Thank you.